Welcome to Live with Sensei. I'm your host, Jay Haynes, for the Film Sensei YouTube channel. In this 12th episode of my inaugural live streaming season, I am hosting a roundtable Q&A. For anyone that is new to my channel, welcome. I'm delighted that you are here. The Film Sensei YouTube channel is all about helping people use HitFilm quickly and easily to make the best and most professional quality videos possible for little or even no expense. In today's live stream, I have an amazing panel of guests with me. They are all HitFilm experts in their own way when it comes to making awesome video content. And I would like to introduce them one at a time and let them say a few words. And I would like to start with Frank. Welcome, Frank.
Hey. My name is Frank from Florida. That's about it.
And who is the lovely lady with you?
Oh, that's Courtney.
I am the one that you'll find in the comments known as Mermaid Clover.
Okay.
Also in Florida.
Wonderful. Fantastic. Next, I would like to bring in Tony, NXVisualStudio. Welcome, Tony.
Hey, how you doing? Sorry, yeah. I live in the UK, pretty cold, dark. I like to make things with the particle simulator and HitFilm. That's pretty much it, really.
Awesome. It is great to have you, sir. Next, I would like to bring in Tony, DafterThings.
Yeah, so
Welcome.
another Tony from the UK. We're not all called Tony. So if you want to call me Dafter, that'll make things easier. I make stop motion videos using tiny little plastic action figures, post them onto YouTube, and I use HitFilm to do the editing, compositing, and visual effects. And basically, I use the other people on this stream to help me do it as easily as possible.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Tony, for being here. It's great to have you. Next, I would like to introduce Greg, also known as GrayMotion on the forums. Welcome, Greg.
Hey, welcome. Thanks. My name's Greg. I live in Colorado. I'm an end user of HitFilm, Motion 5, Final Cut Pro. I love to do motion graphics. I love to learn.
Outstanding. Well, thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. And last but not least, I would like to introduce Mike, also known as Triam23 on the forums. Welcome, Mike.
Hello, I'm Mike. I live in California, and I gotta say, Jay, that was ridiculously epic opening music for the live stream today.
Thanks.
I'm sitting here kind of like, I feel like I'm in an action movie where something's going to explode in slow motion.
You know, I can't remember where I found that. I think I found that. It might be Eric Matyas, who's on the HitFilm forums all the time. I think that might be his music. So, at any rate, it is delightful to have everybody here. I'm going to come over here. Actually, I'm going to do this first.
I finished my cereal early this week.
All right. Like I said, today we are hosting a roundtable Q&A, so get those questions fired up and type away in the chat room window. If you have a general question for the group, just go ahead and ask it. If you have a question specifically for somebody, note their name in the question. As far as if it's Tony, maybe Dafter or NX would work there too. I have to say this is a golden opportunity to pick the best and brightest brains around, and I certainly personally will not be passing this up, and neither should you. I do want to remind you that my new Udemy masterclass is out, the Absolute Beginners course on HitFilm Express. There's a link in the description of this video for those of you who are watching this after the fact. Don't forget to use the coupon code Sensei to get the lowest possible price possible. It is actually already embedded in the link. And I want to start with a question for the group, and possibly mostly for Tony and ex-Tony, and that is hardware. I recently bought a new computer, and it was specifically for HitFilm. You see this question all the time on the forums. People ask, hey, I need to buy a new computer. What's the best computer for HitFilm? And so I would like to throw it to Tony C and ask him what his opinion would be on that first, and then anybody else can kind of chime in after that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, really, just you need to look at what kind of use case you kind of use your computer for. So if you're, how do I put it? If you're doing more than just say light film editing, like with footage and stuff like that, maybe you're doing some rendering in 3D software, and Music production using a DAW. So you pretty much just want to look for cores, really. I mean, right now we've got AMD coming out with some pretty hot hardware. Okay. Oh, bear with me 1 second.
That's all right. Anybody else want to jump in there?
I could share my spec because a couple of years ago I had a very, very nice machine, and now it's very standard. So I've got a
That's how it always happens.
yeah, I've got an i7 3770K. It's not overclocked. GTX 760 or 780, which is even then a mid-level graphics card. 16 gig of RAM, and I sometimes struggle when using HitFilm, especially when I've got a lot of effects in there. I wasn't using the half render or whatever it's called, the half resolution mode. Didn't know it was there until I saw your course, Jay. I was using full render and it would lag quite a bit. Yes, indeed. It's made a massive difference. Also, the pre-render's made a massive difference. I can do whatever I need to do with my films with that system now that I've learned a little bit better how to handle it. So that's not a top, nowhere near a top of the range machine nowadays. I would say very mid-level, if not getting towards the lower end, and it still does the job for me.
Sorry
Tony
about
had
that.
to excuse himself because the
The
dog
dog just
burst
came
in.
in first. Oh my word. Yeah. So, like, if you're using, say, 3ds Max or Blender or something like that, maybe you want to look for something that's more core and thread orientated. Right now with AMD, you've got the new PCI Express 4 gen architecture. It's pretty much, it gives you more bandwidth for, like, say, something to do with M.2 SSDs. So, like, if you're scrubbing with 4K footage, for example, you know, that's going to be more sort of fluent on the timeline. It's just going to scrub, and, you know, you're not really going to have any holdups or any stuttering or anything like that. For hardware, like when it comes to GPU, right now, I would suggest waiting a little bit because, for NVIDIA, the prices are going to be cut, basically, because there's competition in the market. Wait for the new 3000 series of NVIDIA cards. They're just going to be a better architecture, more power efficient, and cheaper. So that's a good thing for you. Pretty much that's it, really. I mean, if you look at processors like, say, price to performance wise, you know, I think it's the what is it now? Bear with me. It's the i7. What is it again? No, i5. It's a 4-core 8-thread part. It costs around about the same price as an 8-core 16-thread part. Basically, the only gain you're getting from the Intel part at the minute would seem to be, thank you for getting rid of the noise. Could you Mike, could you mute the mic for a second?
Can I? Yeah.
Yes, please. Oh, that's better. Yeah, I was just hissing in my ear. So basically, the only real gains of having an Intel processor at the minute on a budget would really be for like things like Photoshop and maybe just light editing, basically. You know, for the same price, you could get something that basically outperforms not just in video editing, but in music production, pretty much in nearly every area. You know, the only gains really is like, say, gaming and sort of like Photoshop, and you know, you're kind of losing out. You know, things are moving on in the hardware industry, basically. That's what I'm trying to say. So that's my little tidbit for that, anyway.
And then I'll apparently I'm the background noise guy.
Sorry.
It's good. It's good to let me know. Last week I didn't have headsets on, and you could hear some echoing in the live stream. So you know, I'm trying to do this better. Anyway, I mostly agree with Tony. There are a couple areas I disagree with Tony, and he's right that AMD is doing some fantastic things with hardware. And what Tony brought up that was nice was other software like Blender. Because we often get people on the forum ask what hardware I should run for HitFilm, and I always want to ask them, what else are you running? Because for HitFilm, at the moment, the hardware acceleration is Intel-based for hardware video deceleration or NVIDIA. So for HitFilm, what you want is a fast NVIDIA card, and you want a fast Intel processor because HitFilm is currently optimized to take advantage of that hardware. So if you're honestly just doing mostly HitFilm stuff, you want Intel NVIDIA, but then you have to start looking at what else you do. And of course, Tony does a lot of 3D stuff in 3ds Max, and you also use Blender, right, Tony? Or are you just all 3ds Max
little.
mostly?
Very, very little.
Okay, but Tony is getting the advantage of multi-threading from AMD in his other software that he's not getting in HitFilm. So for Tony, AMD is a good option. I do a lot of HitFilm and I do a lot of Vegas, and both HitFilm and Vegas are optimized more for Intel and NVIDIA hardware. So I'm an Intel NVIDIA guy for that reason.
Yeah, I'll tell you another thing I'm noticing, because I'm on Intel at the minute, you see, because I think I told you, Mike. I had the 6950 and I was doing a render queue, and I was unfortunate to wake up to basically a blank screen on my computer. It was dead, basically. So I had to put in a spare part, which is like, I think the 5820. And like, things like, especially with music production, you have all of your plugins, and you pretty much have all of your effects, and then you have tracks in themselves. So you have your chains where you have all your effects set up on. And right at the minute, I can't continue to be productive because all of the cores, all of the threads are just completely, it's saturating. It's all bottlenecking. So pretty much, I'm looking forward to the 3950 when it comes out, because that will be a huge relief. Because I can't even carry on with my client's work at the minute because it's just a drag at the minute. So yeah, back to you.
Well, I tell you what, that sounds like great advice. Does anybody else have anything they want to say about hardware?
Spend as much money as you're comfortable spending.
Well, that sounds good. That's what I did. I had a budget. I got a friend who knew everything. I asked questions on the forum. I went, I took all that stuff to him and said, what can we get? And he got me a great system. I have to tell you, even working in 4K, my computer is really smooth, and I don't have to scale it down to half or quarter or anything like that. And I spent less than $1,500 to deck out my system. Now, it was during 4th of July sale. And so I got some really good deals. But coming up here pretty quick is going to be Thanksgiving, and I would imagine probably a lot of deals will be available then too. How about this question? Hey guys, been trying the Foundry. This is from Nick. Foundry Camera Tracker with bad results. The problem is getting the floor plane aligned. It never seems to work as easily as in the tutorials. Any tips for aligning the floor plane? Anyone?
That was me giving somebody else a chance to speak first, because I know I talk a lot.
Oh, this is definitely for you, Mike. Definitely for you.
So, okay, starting off, Nick, let's just say, first off, that with any tracker, just the fact that it works at all is incredible. So in HitFilm, we have the 1 and the 2 point tracking, and it's tracking a point of contrast. We'll use my eye as the example. It's a point, and it tracks that point. And then when we do 2 points, we're tracking both eyes. And then what the Foundry camera tracker is doing is it's tracking, hundreds of points, and it's just generating this point cloud. And all it's doing, the tracker doesn't know what anything is, how large anything is, how far anything is away. You can help it in Foundry figure this out by giving it information on your camera. But all it's doing is tracking this cloud of points that it's seeing relative to each other. And when it does this, there are going to be infinite mathematical solutions that will yield the same equivalent 3D space. So it's a big guess. And then when you're creating a ground plane, you're just grabbing 3 or more points. And as you say, it's always coming out skewed. And it's just noting that you're right, it is never as easy in the tutorials because it's just doing a guess. And just the fact that whether it's a point tracker or Mocha, Mocha's just measuring these rectangles moving relative to each other and then guessing. So just the fact that tracking works is pretty amazing. And you're right, it's just going to come off, it's going to be skewed every time. And that's just kind of something you have to accept with tracking, because you just grab these 3 points and it doesn't know if this one's farthest forward or farthest back. They're just points. So another thing where it comes down to in tutorials is we cheat. Before we do a tutorial, before any of us do a tutorial, we've already done it a couple of times to practice. So we've already picked a clip that we know we can track. We've already picked an area on the clip that we know is going to come out pretty soon, so we can do it quickly. So when we're working, not doing a tutorial, it's also really slow for us because it's our first time doing it. How do I make this thing happen? As far as tips, Nick, go ahead and put in the comment whose tutorials have you watched, so we can see, so we have an idea of what techniques you've seen and where we can go after that. Terry 4K Productions has put up in the chat, on the Foundry Tracker, is there an easy way to select multiple points for a ground plane? Terry, as far as I know, it's just the box select. I wish we had a full lasso select. I think that would be easier, but I guess that's something for us to write, excuse me, Foundry about. And then I'll shut up for a moment and let somebody else talk.
All my tutorials are on the fly, dude. I never try anything in advance. What, are you kidding? Come on. And I'm sure Greg is that way too.
Oh yeah, on the fly. You're lucky. All my Foundry stuff, to be honest, the camera comes in upside down. It don't matter what I track, and I mean everything. So yeah, I need to get in my canoe, go back upstream, try that again and again and again until I figure out what I'm doing wrong. Basically.
It'll slow down the Foundry Tracker, but you can tell it to create more tracking points, and it'll pick your floor a little bit better. It'll still be off, but not really, because a ground, if you're out in nature especially, or even sometimes on a flat table, you might just pick the wrong thing, that's all. So like say in nature, there's little bumps on the ground, so maybe you picked whatever, too deep instead of up here where it should be level, if that makes sense. That's it.
I think it's just the I think I snuck the answer to Terry's question in last time I was rambling. I've got this hair sticking up in the back. It's weird. I think with the Foundry Tracker, the key to this one is just that master point that it creates. Right, when you create your scene, it creates this master track point. And there's no way around it. What that point is for is to adjust your scene. So what I'll do with that is take that first null that Foundry creates, and I'll hard move it to 0, 0, 0 in my 3D space, and then just rotate that master point, because that's going to connect to it creates the master point, which connects to the camera and anything else I've done. So if I just move that master point to 0, 0, 0 in the universe, and then rotate everything around it, but you just got to hand rotate it until it lines up with HitFilm's ground plane. I mean, there just isn't any way around that yet. You just got to do that.
Yeah, that's the easy way though. That's the best way to do it. That's the right way to do it. The way you just described it, that's correct. Because you want to be able to have gravity. That's the only reason we align things in the first place, so we can have particles that do what they're supposed to do.
But it's also nice when you're bringing in 3D models, because if Foundry puts the center of or Mocha, I've had it sometimes put the center of the universe off at like -200,000, and then I bring a model in, and where's my model? So if you just center, putting everything in 0, 0, 0 always makes it easier to add elements. And then he did this on the Red Giant channel, but it was Hashi, Action Movie Dad, earlier this year did in Red Giant's Cheap Tricks. He did a series on underwater, the underwater one, and he does a thing where he sets up what he called normalizing a scene, and he did it with a Mocha track, and it was similar to what we did. He moved the point to the center, and he centered the world around it. But then what Hashi goes on to do is he drops a plane the size of his comp in that center point, and then starts adjusting the scale of things until that he adjusts the scale of his track until that plane fills the window. And he calls that normalizing his space. And that was a really, I hadn't thought about that before. That's a smart thing to do, because also with the tracker, since it's, guessing, you also sometimes get really weird scales, and, the space, sometimes I've done a solve and it'll be like the whole space will be 200 units across. And sometimes it's, 300,000 and the camera can't even, the HitFilm camera can't even see the end. So that, go look at that, look up Hashi's Red Giant Cheap Tricks and look at that section on normalizing. And he's doing it in Mocha in After Effects, but since he's using Mocha, it should translate to HitFilm. And I mean, the same thing translates to Foundry as well, and that's a good way to set up your scene.
Yeah, and that's the one that I looked at, and that's the one that I saw. It's the Aquaman underwater effects. Let me grab that, and I'm just going to drop that into the chat room here. So there it is. That's the one with the normalizing of the plane, and that's the one that I use. I would say I think in all the Foundry tracks that I've done, I think I did one where it actually was right side up, and I was like, what? It's broke. Something is wrong. It's actually correct. Every other one though is I just build it and I flip it over and I center it back into the universe, and then I use Hashi's trick of normalizing, scaling everything. It makes the camera in perspective mode look very strange, but if you just ignore that, it doesn't affect the camera in any way. I actually specifically talked to Mike, and I specifically talked to and I want to say I talked to Axel or maybe Javert about it, and they said the size of the camera in perspective mode has no value, or it isn't affecting the camera. It just looks weird. And when you move around, the camera will get really small or get really big or whatever when you scale everything to a normalized thing. But I put the link in the chat room, so go check that out, because it's really a slick video. It's not a HitFilm video, but it really works for HitFilm.
So you guys just told me all the knowledge, all this stuff you just told me. That's how I export a 3D scene over from there to HitFilm. Exactly.
In Filmer.
Yeah, just you create a bounding box for the scene or per object.
I've dropped another link in the chat, which is to Martin Brennan's old tutorial on aligning 3D space in Mocha HitFilm 2. And sorry, Frank, keep going.
Yeah. So, but it's the same thing. It really is. You guys already know how to do it. That's crazy. You've known how to do it. Oh my God. You guys are awesome. You knew it, but you didn't even know it. Oh my God.
So I have a question for DafterThings. I would like to know how exactly you get your stuff so smooth, because I have worked hard at trying to do, and my son loves to do this stuff. He adores your channel, and he loves to do it. But when he does it, when I do it, it is just ugly. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you get it to look so smooth.
Well, the surprising thing is my animation is pretty choppy compared to a few other people. So I animate at 12 frames per second, which is pretty low. You can animate at 6 and 10 and get away with it. I animate at 12.
12 is the classical standard.
It is. And if you haven't got a huge amount of time, it's a nice balance between looking okay and not taking you forever to create a couple of seconds. I know people do 15, 24, 30. Seen people try 60, but I do not know why. My tips: ease in and ease out. One of the 12 principles of animation makes things look so much better. Just that tiny little movement. The first movement is small, and then you accelerate into it. If you're going to take a punch, you do the pull back, wait, tiny little movement, deliver the punch. and that ease in, ease out makes things look a lot smoother. You can do a little bit of motion blur. I've seen some people do fantastic stuff, probably at 12 or 15, but they add motion blur. If you do it too much, I think it looks poor. If you get it right, it just tricks the eye into thinking this is somebody moving normally when they're only moving once every 12th of a second. So ease in and ease out, perhaps a little bit of motion blur, but don't overdo it.
Cool.
Yeah.
I guess you can't do squash and stretch with Lego figures.
No, you can't. You can do the anticipation. It is so easy to rush animation, so easy. Every picture I take is 1/12 of a second. And for me, it could be 5-10 minutes doing that sequence. And it feels as if I should be finishing by now. My punch should already have gone through by now. And I sometimes miss a couple of frames that should be in there just to sell the shot a little bit more. That hold your punch, then deliver it. So many people just flick an arm out. It doesn't have any weight behind it, and you just lose a little bit of realism with plastic toys. Yeah. But there you go. Is that good for you, Jim? Yeah.
I have a question for Tony DafterThings.
Yeah.
Okay. Because Greg and Tony C and Frank and I, we're mostly 3D guys, so you're our only alternate perspective today. When you're doing the stop motion, let me see if I can figure out the best way to phrase this. Are you animating, right? Because you did that thing, the content warning. What you said you did that in 2 hours, right? The imply the chopping up thing.
Yes.
So 2 hours from conception to uploading.
Absolutely.
For like a 1 minute video, which is an insane. I remember Robot Chicken, that show. I remember in the behind the scenes, their animators bragging that they could actually do 10 seconds in a day. So for you to whip out a 1 minute animation with voice and sound effects and upload it in 3 hours, first I'm just blah. How did he do that? So here's the question: when you're animating something, let's say somebody talking like me, and I'm gonna talk and I'm gonna blah 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 blah. Are you animating your scenes, every action all the way through, or maybe for something like the chopping, did you cheat it and just animate one chop and kind of recut the frames in HitFilm to take one repetition and stretch it out into different movements?
No, they were all individual frames. There was no repeats.
You are an insanely fast and masochistic human being. I'm impressed.
Well,
God.
Well, there's two things. One of them, it was a simple scene. Yeah, there wasn't a lot of set changes, camera changes. It was all one camera. Moving a camera for me is a nightmare. I hate moving a camera because if you have to reshoot a scene, you'll never get it back in the same position with the same lighting. And again, at 12 frames per second, I animated for 3 hours with one of my lights only half on, and I didn't realize, and I'd done another 8 hours with all my lights on. And I thought, I can't go back and do it again. I'll do it in post. And I just changed the lighting in HitFilm afterwards. So that chopping one, in all my videos, and I don't see many other people doing this, and this is a curse for me. Many people are very good at implying speech just with a slight head movement or an arm movement. So generally, they're making one move with a hand, doing 3 seconds of speech, and then a nod with the head, and there's not much animating in between, and that is brilliant. I made a mistake of thinking I'm going to animate the head for every syllable. Now, sometimes when I look back at it, I think it looked like a nodding dog. The head is moving all over the place, but I can't stop myself doing it now because it's part of the muscle memory of I'm going to say okay, so up for O,
it's
down
also
for
your
K.
style.
Yeah, but that adds for me a hell of a lot of time that I could save just by saying okay, just nod the head down. That's it. So when when I load up a piece of dialogue to animate to, and I see that it's going to go to 120, 140 frames, because I know how long I'd sit back and think, right, I'm going to make a cup of tea. I'm going to get myself some water, because animating those 7 seconds, 10 seconds is a long haul. So I tend to do everything in 3 or 4 second slices. So for every cut, I'll sit there, I'll stop, because it is torturous. I don't particularly like animating. I animate to get my story into a video format, and stop motion for me was the simplest way of doing it. Animating is painful. You need patience, tiny little things, like I say, the lights, or if I reach over and I nudge my camera and I can never get it back again to where it was, those things haunt me in my sleep. So, so people who are doing 10, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, the people who did Kubo and the 2 strings, I know they've got a team, and I know they've got, but who would want to choose to do that for a living? That's masochism.
Oh God! When you watch Kubo and it gets to the ending credits and they do the time lapse when they're moving that 8-foot tall puppet.
Yeah.
Hey, do you do timing sheets before you animate? Do you plot everything out? I mean, do you kind of maybe stick figure some key poses to pre-plan what you're going to animate, or do you kind of hold it in your head and go with it?
No, so I'm very big on the script writing. Let's call it a screenplay. It's a bit of a fancy word for somebody who does it in a bedroom, but I'm very big on that section. So I spend weeks or months getting the script to a position where I'm happy with it. I then assemble the cast and the set and all these sorts of things, like a real film. I've created my shot list, which are stick drawings. And somebody said to me, "You've got the figures, you've got the set. Why not take a photograph of the shot rather than draw it out in stick figures?" I thought, that's a great idea, isn't it? And then I've got everything lined up. But
it's funny. I think that might have been me.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. I haven't done it yet. I've still got, just 2 stick figures with a P for Pete and a T for Terry above their names to let me know which way round I'm looking. And I do that for every line of dialogue. I used to use Celtex or Celtex or whatever it is, which is a script writing software, and that allowed you to import images as well, and it used to make your shot list for you. Because if you've got a complicated scene with lots of scene changes or dialogue changes, you don't want to miss one of them and have to go back and do it again, because I'd say your camera won't be in the same position, your lighting will never be the same, and it will just look a bit off. Walk cycles, I know I'm talking a bit too much. Walk cycles for me are horrendous. I tend to try and do it above the knee so you don't see the feet. And if I can ever write the story where it says, "and they walk off camera left," I will find a reason not to have to show it. I will find somebody else doing something, and when we cut back, they're at the Star Trek elevator door already. They haven't walked there. They've just got there. So there you go. I don't know how many questions I answered which weren't even asked there, but there you go. Did I answer the question, Mike?
Yeah, I think you did. I think we need to start a GoFundMe page for DafterThings and get him some Edelkrone gear, because we get you an Edelkrone slider one and a head one, and then you'll have repeatable stop motion animation camera moves, and yeah.
I saw somebody in the chat, that 70s kid and his toys was in the chat earlier on. I don't know if he's still there. He does animation with similar figures to myself and also with Lego. He's got a cake stand, a rotating cake stand. And he's also got a slider that he puts his camera on as well. So he basically, the Lego did a Friends set recently. And it's the cafe, I can't remember what it's called, the coffee shop in Friends. And basically it's on this cake stand, and he keeps the camera in the same place and moves the entire set to get his different camera angles, and then slides it along this slider thing. Brilliant setup like that. I've now bought myself 2 cake stands, a small one and a big one. The small one I put the camera on so I can do nice swivel shots. I don't know if they're not pans, but a swivel shot. And I've got a bigger one that I put my set on if I want to basically turn it around and do something from a different angle. So if you want to buy me something, that's fine. But I've got enough cake stands.
Welcome back, Jay.
My internet died.
Maybe. Well, now I think we have to ask the audience if the service was interrupted by Jay dropping out, and if we've just been talking to ourselves for the last few minutes.
Good question.
I hope not, but I don't think it has been. I think you're okay because it can keep going on without me. Even if I drop out, the stream keeps happening, right? I just have to get back in. It took me forever. I had to reboot everything from scratch to get back here. Sorry about that, guys. I hope you had a good conversation. I'll watch it later.
Yeah, DafterThings has some really good stuff in here.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I missed it.
You'll be able to see it back. I didn't know this either, but Tony, DafterThings, you're still on HitFilm 4, right?
I am. I've got 13. I sometimes load things in there just for a particular effect. But again, I'm happy with HitFilm 4. It just does what I want it to do. And until you lot break the back of Foundry Tracking and all this sort of stuff, I use that. I know there was questions earlier on. I'll be using Foundry Tracker when everybody else has found out the best way of doing it.
And the only reason I bring that up for the audience is just, I don't know, it's just the occasional observation of we're always talking about the newest and the greatest and the most recent, and I have HitFilm Express open, not Pro, in the background for no reason at all whatsoever. Beta test. But it was just wanting to point out that you don't necessarily, also depending on your workflow, you don't necessarily need to be caught up on the most recent version of HitFilm, because for what Dafter's doing with the stop motion, I don't think you necessarily need at this point necessarily all of the newer stuff that's come out yet.
No, not at all. Not at all.
For what you're doing. And Wedge Oz, also known as West Effects, he only moved up. He'd been on HitFilm Pro 3 for a very long time, and he only upgraded. I think he jumped up to 12 earlier this year. But I'll try and find his channel. I mean, if you look at his stuff, he has this thing that he did just on his iPad. No, it was HitFilm 2. His iPad and HitFilm 2, and it's like, this 2-hour epic with these amazingly ambitious shots. And even being on HitFilm 2, he's got some shots that look really terrible, and that's part of the fun of it. And then he's got some shots that look like that would stand up on a TV show or even a movie. And it's just, he didn't need to upgrade yet.
Dude, I sometimes worry that.
You're right there, Greg.
Sorry, I sometimes worry that FX Home are missing.
What am I missing?
Greg.
I don't know why Frank and Quarter.
Greg a high five, and it didn't exactly work out.
Oh, okay. I thought you were making fun of me talking like this. So
No.
No, we're high-fiving.
High-fiving, but it was across the screen, so trying to figure out which way was left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one. No, this one.
There you go. You got it.
Oh. There we go. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry. While you're all high-fiving, I think FX Home are missing a bit of a trick when it comes to HitFilm Express. I see certainly from the people doing stop motion, it would be very, very useful for many of those people. Many are on mobile anyway, so okay, I understand that. Many may have lower spec machines. Okay, I understand that. HitFilm Express, free, powerful, does a lot of the simple things that I need to do. None of the funky stuff. Okay, it would be fantastic if maybe somebody could say, here is a spec of a machine that you could use to run HitFilm Express with all of these clever things like the resolution settings and the pre-rendering or proxies or whatever they're called. Somebody say, and you can get away with this on a machine like this, because at the moment it's a little bit intimidating. I know, Jay, your course helps. HitFilm Express is a bit intimidating, and if you run it on a machine straight out of the box, it might put you off thinking this isn't going to work for me. So
Which is why you need my course.
Absolutely. I said to you before, I wrote 5 things down that was going to squeeze my, quicken my workflow in the space of the first 2 sessions. It's astonishing. Yeah, good job. And seeing as we've got 3D people on here, the other thing I put on my box on my list when I came away from it was, why don't I create virtual scenes in HitFilm and then just move the virtual camera around so I don't keep having to recreate the scene from different angles using images. So when I'm green screening, I kept, okay, here's the background, here's the fence, here's the sun, here's the clouds, doing it every single time. I could have done that once in 3D and then just move the camera to look at it from a different axis. Why I've never done it in the past, I have no idea. But there was a bit on the 3D camera there. I just thought, I'll use that. That's going to save me a hell of a lot of time.
It's good that you know now.
Yeah, indeed.
There's a question in chat from, if I'm reading that right, Patriot DSA. It says, I have a problem with lighting other objects or sequences. If you could possibly reiterate on that, like a bit more of a definition. Is it to do with, is your scene looking too dark, or your objects looking too dark, or, yeah.
Right. Be right back.
Mike is taking a leave. He'll be right back. That is a good question. Patriot DSA, if you would expand on that a little bit, ask why or what kind of problems are you having lighting objects or sequences in HitFilm, because that would be Tony C's expertise right there. So he would be able to definitely answer that for you. In the meantime, I think Leo says, I've been on HitFilm so long, I just don't have a camera that's compatible. I got to tell you, almost everything I do is with my cell phone. I do have a Nikon camera. It's a 3500, so it's not a great camera by any means. And I have been known to use it sometimes, but most of the time I use my cell phone. It's an LG G6, and it is perfect. I mean, it has a wonderful camera. It does it shoots great footage, and there's no reason why I need anything else, really.
It's actually shocking, like the quality of phones now in comparison. You know, you can get some really good shots. It's just down to like sort of grading, you know, and just fine tweaking. And sometimes you wouldn't even know the difference.
Yep. Now you do need to transcode cell phone footage, because it's almost always shot in variable frame rate, and if you I use Handbrake, but there are lots of other alternatives to Handbrake, and transcoding it is absolutely the way to go. HitFilm actually surprisingly does okay with my footage, but it's not perfect. It's better if I transcode it. So I just transcode everything into the best possible type of footage that I need, and then I work with it, and it works brilliantly in HitFilm.
Yep.
Any other feedback on that? Oh, here we go. When he gets back, we'll ask him to throw up a link. Here's for you, Mike. You're back. When you get back, can you throw up a link to your transcoding tutorial?
Yeah. There it is.
Yeah, there it is.
I already had it up.
Wrong one. Right there. Right there.
Nope, one more.
There it is. One more. Oh, there's the kitty. Wait. And who is this? What is this kitty's name?
So before the stream started, my other cat, my big white fluffy Cyrano de Bergerac, showed up. This is Scotty, and he's very annoyed that I have disturbed him from his nap to make him world famous. You can see, you can just see he's like, why am I being held? Why are you doing this to me?
Doesn't look amused.
No. He is a very, very patient, very gentle, very sweet kitty, and he's going to go that way.
So I have a question for Tony C. Okay. We talked about your Mike and I talked about one of your effects last week, using the heat distortions and the other distortions to create a sort of a fractal looking, really cool sort of a background thing. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about how you did that.
Well, where to start with that one? Basically, I was just looking more towards how the effect actually works, and pretty much I got what was it? It was like a gradient on the plane, and basically had just had a ramp. And it was quite evident that it really based its like with the fall off. It's really hard to. What is going on in the background there?
Mike has left again. He keeps flashing these signs. I'll be right back.
I'll tell you what. I'll just bear with me. I'll share the screen. Share that one. Bring it up. Maybe you have the screen now.
Are you ready for me?
Yeah, sure.
There you go.
Okay, so basically, I discovered it by accident, really. To be honest with you, but it turned out using a light flare, the light fall off. You know how it sort of gradually transitions into nothingness. The actual flare itself, it produces really organic effect, sort of effects with the procedural noise, because it's a mixture of procedural noise on top of displacement and maybe a couple of other things. But for things like this, I mean, I'm using the fluid. It's the fluid distortion. Have you got the screen?
Yes.
Okay. And all that's happening there is literally I've just cranked up the scale and cranked up the distortion, and it pretty much does itself. And for shots like this, you pretty much can do untold amount of effects. You can make gaseous and nebulas. You can create the surfaces of of the sun, because when you're making like a surface for the sun, you really just want to steer clear of all like 3D modeling and stuff and making massive scenes and trying to get the camera in really close and doing ridiculous things like that. You can just literally do it with a plane, light flare on top, and then just whack on heat distortions effects to further detail it. So say if I had, bear with me, if I had sort of really sort of hot, bright, sort of molten like spots, I could just then whack on the parallax effect, and what it would do is just, if I turn it off, you'll see, you might be able to see this on stream.
Mm-hmm.
Turning, going between on and off, and all it does is it creates these small little details of little dips and valleys inside that sort of molten effect, and then you just basically use the color vibrance and some glows, and you are literally away. I mean, this sort of shot would be ideal for, I think you've seen like in the movies where you have this vastly huge scene with like a really small ship going across the sun, the surface of the sun, really cut up close.
Yeah.
This is pretty much what they're doing. I mean, Sapphire did a couple of tutorials way back in, I don't know when, but basically this is the same principle. And all they did was they basically stacked the layers, basically stacking the effects on top of each other with like say light streaks to create tiny little details in the bright spots and little surfaces like that. And it's so easy. You could literally just do this right now within the space of 5 minutes. So that's my little tidbit of information for you.
That's really cool. That is really cool. Thank you for sharing that.
That's okay. Over to you.
How about this question? Aside from making tutorials, what was the main thing pushing you to upgrade to HitFilm Pro?
Who's the question to?
I think that's for everybody.
Anybody.
I never upgraded to HitFilm Pro. I started on HitFilm Ultimate before. Well, that was back when I jumped on into HitFilm. There were HitFilm Express was a paid product, so HitFilm Pro was 300 and Express was 150. But I jumped right into Ultimate / Pro, and I've been there ever since.
I also started in HitFilm Ultimate. I started in HitFilm 2 Ultimate because I was making a movie for my karate school, and I had I had this idea that I wanted to do this Matrix bullet scene with Nerf darts, and so I like anybody, I would go out and found a tutorial on how to do it, and it was by Rody Paulus, who now is the founder and owner of Action VFX. But this is before he did that, and he had this great tutorial on how to make a Nerf bullet or a matrix bullet thing, and I thought that's perfect. That's exactly what I want to do. And that was the first time I'd ever heard of HitFilm, and so I went and I downloaded the product, and I think you can still do this. Like, well, I think HitFilm Express is sort of the trial of HitFilm Pro, but back then you download
definitely, especially since they changed Express to just watermarking all the add-on effects. Yeah, at this point, Express is pretty much the demo for Pro. There's only like about 5 things that Express can't do that Pro does that I can think of offhand.
Right, and so back then you could download Pro and then play with it. You just couldn't render anything out with it. And so I played with it and went, man, I've got to own this, and I just bought it. So I started in Pro, like Mike did. Anybody else? How did you start in Express and move to Pro, or is anybody still with Express?
I use Express because the other ones are just a little bit more than I'm ready for. I don't really need 3D aspects in what I'm doing. I just need composite shots, good transitions, nice title work and stuff. So I stick with Express until I learn a little bit more from you guys. I think I'll be okay. Then maybe get something better.
Good answer.
Yeah, good answer. Anybody else?
I've always just been on Pro.
Right.
And that's about it.
You've never used you have the Express version obviously there, but you use Pro.
Yeah.
The only reason I have the Express version is to do tutorials for Express.
I like it a lot. Express is really cool.
Yeah, I mean it's essentially the same, but there's just more to Pro.
Yeah, I'm with Jay though. The main reason I keep Express on my system now is for tutorials, or if I'm helping answer questions on the forum. It's just by having Express, and my Express has no add-ons, and that makes it very easy for me to keep track of if I'm answering someone's question. Can you do this with Express? Or are you going to need to spend money on an add-on or on Pro?
Same here as well. I went from Composite Lab and Effects Lab, which were the forerunners to HitFilm. I used to load it up, do a light sword, wait for it to crash, and then turn it off again for a couple of months until. And at that point, I couldn't afford the price of those two. I had to keep it a secret that I'd bought that stuff. When HitFilm came out, I was very nervous about going into it because I just had crash after crash after crash. I think I went HitFilm 3 might have been the first one that I bought, but I went straight for Pro again, mainly because I don't like not having everything available. I could probably get away with Express. I'm absolutely certain of it, but I just hate that when you want something, it's not there. It's so, again, I kept it quiet, bought it without anybody knowing. And
anybody who is important in your family.
Absolutely, yeah. But again, when I probably still wouldn't buy HitFilm Pro unless there were those very often sales where you get a very good price. There's one going on at the moment. There must be a Black Friday one that they're doing at the moment, surely.
It starts on the 26th, I think.
Okay, I don't know what the deal is this time. Half price or $100 off or something like that?
It's going to be up to 40% off depending on the bundle. All we know is up to 40% off because that's what the video says.
Okay, and that brings it into the price range where I can keep it quiet and still afford it.
Yeah. Yeah, and unfortunately I'm going to be gone over that time, so I'm hoping that it continues to go until Saturday, which is when I get back, and then I'll be able to re-up my HitFilm Pro. So at least
because you're going on vacation, right, Jen?
Yes, and I will be out of touch. So I won't be able to do anything. So yeah, I'm absolutely. Here's a question: do you know when FX Home is releasing their new masterclass?
That'll be whenever they release the short film that they're working on, which is going to be whenever they release the next version of HitFilm, which we're not going to know when that's going to come out until they release it. But historically, at least since I got into FX Home Software, every year they have done a major release the week of Thanksgiving. So my guess is within about 2 weeks, but that's just a guess based on past history.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's probably a very good guess. A very good guess.
Probably a little bit off topic. Sorry, Jay. Do you know if HitFilm and FX Home still work with Film Riot on some of these things? I've not seen too much collaboration over the last few months or so.
I don't know, but I think they started working with Ember Films, who are incredibly talented, and they love working with them, and I think they just keep working with them. They're right there local with them, so that helps a lot. But I do think that they still, obviously they get along real well with Ryan Conley and Film Riot for sure.
Yeah. I think it's gonna depend on how busy Film Riot is, and I mean, since you know, right, they just released their latest short film. And then what's the whole thing that Ryan's been talking about, that this short film is the proof of concept for the feature. And, Film Riot has always been Ryan Connolly saying, this is the show that I do to work things through while I attempt to get to make my first feature film. And I think Ryan is now pushing towards that moment he's been building towards for 10 years. So he and his crew probably don't have time at the moment to do anything with FX Home. Okay. And then we could be wrong when we know their next short film is going to be a Star Wars one because they've told us this. For all we know, suddenly Josh Connolly will appear as the Daniel Craig Stormtrooper cameo, and I don't know. Yeah, and I did a whole live stream speculating about it, and Javert said, "Wow, I was quite amused by your speculation, and I hope you enjoyed the film." And since then, they have released more stuff. And I said to my wife, we should have done that, 2 weeks later, because I now know a lot more about what they're going to be doing than I did back then. So let me see. Here's a question. What is the effect where you use an image's luminance properties to create a glitch effect?
I think Mike answered.
And there it is.
Multitasking.
That's right. Displacement effect. That's what it is. Although there's probably a few ways that you could make that happen. But that'd be the best way.
Jay, can I get you to show my screen for a moment? And this is more of a comment for Tony C. But, okay, good. It's up. I see that. So this is one of Tony's, what was this, HitFilm 3, Tony? Really long time ago, this one?
Wait 1 second. Right, okay.
Oh, sorry. I'll pause it.
I knew you was going to do it.
Yeah, you know why Tony knows that I'm going to do that is because I have not cracked. You see these solar flares, these protuberances coming out, these long streams. I have not yet figured out how Tony's done it, and it's bugged me because I've wanted him to tell me how to do it for years and years and years and years and years. Tony, that Doctor Who fan film that I've been doing with the Daleks chasing the Doctor, it's waiting for you to tell me how to do those solar flares so I can finish it, because the entire climax is in orbit around the star. So my film's been on hold for 4 years waiting for you to teach me that technique. So I'm, publicly asking you we need to set up a time for you to teach me that.
Okay, I'll do a very quick.
Because that was a tutorial teaser and you haven't done the tutorial yet.
I know.
See?
I'll explain about that actually.
See how you turned out. Thanks
okay,
it
hasn't been 4 years, it's been 3.
Okay. No, things happened in life that made things difficult to basically get these tutorials out there. Mike, you already know about them, but anyway, I'll break it down for you. Actually, Frank knows exactly what I'm about to say because he does it. I've actually watched him in his own videos do certain things with 3D models using the Alembic export. So basically, all you're doing is you're getting sort of like the donut, as we call it in 3ds Max. You're making a really thin donut. And you're, I think, you're using the fractal displacement on the donut, just a little bit of fractal displacement. you keyframe whichever axes you want to. This is inside your 3D software, like say 3ds Max or Blender. Okay, and what you do is you basically make it slowly morph around a sphere, right? Just a sphere, one that you can export separately with the rings. Okay, and you bring that into HitFilm, and all you're doing is making the sphere black, bringing the alembic animation in, so that you can have just the actual rings themselves sort of morphing and animating, and then you're basically keying out either with luminance or the demult effect. And the way you get those streaks to go through those rings is you basically set up a reflection, a fractal map in another composite shot, and it's just a simple reflection of moving fractal noise. It's as simple as that.
I thought you were doing something with the particle sim or atomic particles. It's just like, okay, it's a 3D model. Okay.
No, it's a very simple process. Honestly, it's even quite efficient when you're doing it in HitFilm as well. That's all that was down to.
Wait, it's sick.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
I love it. That's awesome.
I'm gonna have to watch this again and take notes the second time that I'm watching.
Yeah, I hope I explained that properly, because as you can probably tell,
yeah.
I'm quite
That's
nervous.
perfect. Perfect.
It sounded good to me. Like I said, I'm gonna get my notepad and let's get writing these things down. As I'm watching this, I'm gonna have to watch my own live stream again, because that's fantastic. That's just fantastic.
No.
Hold it above your head.
No.
All right, here's this. Did HitFilm Express has speed that got cursed to smoother the motion? Answers, anyone?
What?
I'm not sure what that exactly is.
Okay, did HitFilm Express have... No, I can't do it.
I'm going to say, has HitFilm gotten worse recently in terms of being smooth? In terms of playback and stuff.
Yes and no. Once we got to HitFilm 12, the minimum specs for HitFilm raised for the first time since HitFilm 4. So adding stuff to the engine, like effect, it implies that there's more overhead happening, but with the NVIDIA hardware, and they're working on the hardware desync, so they're trying to speed things up as well. Okay, yeah. Here we go. He meant speed ramp. Urban War, I had a discussion on this on the forum yesterday. Did that happen to be you using a different name on the HitFilm forum, just perchance? Was that you? Before I talk more?
Am I on? Yeah, it might have been. Yeah, so I guess the question is what Urban War, where are you going with that?
So, talking amongst yourselves, I'm going to try and call up a piece of footage, and then we'll.
Okay, sounds good. Oh, he says no, it wasn't him. And what is this? Oh, I'll be in the middle of learning something on HitFilm and see a drone video, or vice versa. Is that what? That's my problem. That's what took so darn long for me to get my course out, was that I would spend time working on something. I would go and learn about an effect or something in HitFilm, and then I would go play with it for 3 hours. And it took 8 months later, I finally got the course done because of that. So what can I say? So do you guys have questions for each other?
I do. What are you thinking of the new Sonic movie? Now it's had its modifications. Well, should I say trailer?
I can't believe they got it so wrong the first time.
Oh.
It's just astonishing that someone is paid to create that, and then other people are paid to go, that looks fantastic. That's the one we're going to go for. It's,
Yeah.
What are they thinking?
They must have had a reason to think he needs teeth. He needs teeth and beady little eyes and a tiny little snub nose like that. Must be, I don't know. But he looks much better. I still think the film might be poor, but he looks better.
I agree. It's a much better, more improved look on the second go around for sure. Let me see here. How about this one? What would be the best tutorial for a new user of HitFilm to understand how to create text in 3D? Are you talking about the 3D extruded text in HitFilm Pro, or trying to fake 3D text in HitFilm Express?
Either way, they should just go right to your channel, Jay, because right now you've got all the best tutorials on that.
Yeah,
exactly what I
absolutely.
was about to say.
Them two
Yeah.
guys and that one over there. They all do text like really well.
This one here, that one over there.
Yeah, but again, Jay is the one who has this very channel, the Film Set, right? You've got tutorials on doing 3D text with extrusion and going in and make it in Blender, and you've got some really, right, those tricks for the fake parallax where you just did the 2 layers for the cast shadow. Yeah, just go back through. It's Jay's channel. He can tell you which ones to look at, but they're all on this channel.
Yeah, depending on how you want to do it. There's a lot of different ways, and you're right. That's something that I think I've specialized in.
Jay,
They're really good.
Yeah, we had this conversation before, Jay, that I use your tutorials for 3D text or any type of text. They're absolutely fantastic. I still struggle with Boris. You said in one of our forum discussions, it's simple. You just do this. And I went back to it and thought, no, I still can't. What's wrong with me?
Is that the typing? The type on?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
I did that tutorial just for you.
Okay.
How to use Boris to do the type on text? Because you and I had that conversation, and it is easy.
It is. Whenever it comes to Boris or Mocha or trackers and things like that, I tend to struggle because you go into a new interface, because you go into something I'm not using all day, every day. And my answer to that is I just leave it. I just say, right, do it another way. And I must be missing out on a massive amount that I could be doing, but just don't have the time or patience or brain power.
We'll get Dafter to go into Blender and then right-click select. Unlike everything else in the world, it'll drive you insane.
Oh, no. The new Blender is left-click select.
That's true. It does select that.
But you mentioned Blender. It's sitting on my PC again, still free, I believe, which is astonishing. And it still sits on my PC untouched, because I know that if I start getting into 3D modeling, it will be another thing that takes up time I haven't got. And I haven't really needed 3D. I've tried it in modeling in the past. My brain doesn't cope with it. Even when I go into the 3D camera in HitFilm, I still sometimes struggle to know where I am. And sometimes I can't even see what I've put in there. I'm either pointing in the wrong direction, or I'm too far away from it. Or the one I always get wrong, it's an image sideways. So you don't see anything there at all. And then I just zoom off around the world trying to find it. So anything you can do to help me on all those as well at some point would be good.
I'm ready to talk about Urban War's question with speed when you guys are.
Okay, I'm ready. Do you want me to share your screen?
Yeah, go ahead and do that.
Okay.
Thanks, guys. All right, so I've called up a random piece of footage right here, and I'll just throw that on my editor timeline for the moment. No, before I throw that on my editor timeline, I have here a piece of footage, and the footage is 60 frames per second. But let's take a look at my project settings. My project settings are at 23.96. I'm going to go ahead and change that to 1080/30. That project settings window is displaying, right? I've got my screen shared correctly this week.
It is, and we can see it. How cool!
Good. So this is for Urban War. Well, this is for everybody. Dealing with speed in HitFilm is a little weird, and so let me go back to the project settings. So I've set my project to 1080 and 2997 frames per second. I'll just say 30 because 2997 is awkward. And this is setting a master clock for the project. So this footage happens to be 60 frames per second. But what's going to happen is, as soon as I drop it on the timeline, and if I get this, the editor sequence settings differ to the clip you're adding, because this clip is 60 frames per second. So it's saying this is a 60 frame per second clip and a 30 frame per second project. Do you want me to change this to a 60 frame per second project? And for this discussion, I don't. But as soon as I drop this on the timeline, HitFilm conforms it to the project settings. So even though my footage is 60 frames per second, this data block is not. The frames have been thrown away. What is on my timeline is now 30 frames per second, period. So if I'm going to, did I grab rate stretch? Is that rate stretch? I never, no, that's ripple edit.
Rate stretch is on the bottom.
Okay. Yes, it is. I don't edit in HitFilm. I edit in Vegas. So these tools sometimes I'm not as familiar. So anyway, if I'm going to start rate stretching this, then I'm not going to get the super smooth play. Well, I'm not playing it back, but I mean, I wouldn't get smooth playback on this because it's still it's effectively 30 frames per second, and I've stretched that out, and the frames aren't there. So one way of dealing with that, and I haven't gotten into the speed ramping yet, but if I want true slow motion, what I need to do is I look at my project settings, and my project settings are at 30 frames per second. So if I right-click this in the media bin and select properties, then it's going to see here frame rate 5994 and from file. So if I uncheck that and set that to 2997, now I've told HitFilm that this is a 30 frame per second video. And when I drop it on there, you see how the first time I dropped it on, it was, yay long. Well, here you can see at the bottom, you see this cross hatching on the bottom track. Mm-hmm. That's my audio. And there is no audio there because changing the speed of the video playback didn't change the speed of the audio. So now we can see that the video is twice as long. I'm doing sarcastic air quotes you can't see. Twice as long as the audio, because I have now changed this playback speed, and it is now actually let me mute that track, I think. So right, that's actually slow motion. So that's what you want to do if you're trying to get smooth slow motion in HitFilm. What you want to do is change the properties of the media clip. And what I can even do is I'll change the speed of this too, and I'll just name this slow motion, and then I'll duplicate the clip, and I'll grab this one, and instead, I'll hit that settings clog, and I'll go back to from file, and I'll name this regular motion, and I'll delete this. So if I wanted to here, so now the question where Total War was asking about was about speed ramping, and this is not going to be matched up correctly because I'm not, actually trying to make things match up. I would do this somewhere else in the edit.
You're using the rate stretch tool, so that's really screwing it up.
That's
there you go.
Thank you, Jay.
You bet.
Thank you, Jay. Here's what I'll do. I'll go to my regular motion, and I'll just go to here. I'll make my life easier. I'll go to one. Okay, wait, I'm going to do this a little bit backwards, but what I'm going to do, okay, slow motion. So I'm going to go to 2 minutes, and I'm just going to go ahead and split that. And I'm going to, I'll delete that first half, and then I'll drag my regular motion in, and I'll go to 1 minute, and I'm just going to split that. And that should, if I've done that correctly, we should see, I don't think I've done this correctly. It should go from regular motion into slow motion, except it looks like I didn't quite time that out right, and it's not going to be the same thing. So
yeah, but we get the idea.
I screwed that up. Yeah. But I mean, what I was basically doing is saying if I need a, rather than doing a ramp, if I just want it to be a snap, the best way to do it is just to make 2 copies of your video and edit in between them. And make a comp shot, go into the comp shot. I'll drag on my regular motion one. And the speed effect in HitFilm is kind of janky because I talked about how it conforms the frame when I drop it on the timeline. So I've dropped my regular speed clip into my, well, this is 24 frame per second timeline. So this is now, as far as HitFilm is concerned, this is now 24 frame per second. Sorry, I want to mute that. This is now 24 frame per second video. So if I drop the speed effect in here and I start, I'll keyframe this. And if I keyframe that to be 2, so now I've double speeded this. And when I go forward, don't put a 5-minute clip into a 30-second comp shot to prove your point. Okay, there we go. So I've trimmed the shot, so now this is a 30-second shot. So as I go through here with my speed effect at 2, once I hit about here, my video is going to go away. And the reason that happens is this got conformed to a 24 frame per second clip when it got added to the timeline. And then this speed effect comes after that. So even though this is showing as a 40-second clip, once I hit 20, I run out of frames. And there's nothing left to display, even though the data block is still here. And now maybe I want to trim the end off of this to get rid of these extra frames. But as soon as I trim that and it goes away, oh, look, these frames have gone away. And now my clip ends here because this data block defines what's being fed to the speed effect. And as soon as I trim that, those frames went away and the speed effects can't see them anymore. So it does make this janky, but I can keyframe this. So now I can keyframe this to, it goes to -20. Wow, I've never pushed the speed effect that far. So now I can kind of ramp this where it's ramping and slowing down and slowing down and slowing down. Mm-hmm. But now that it's slowing down, it's not going to get smoother because it's 24 frames per second, not 60 frames per second. So I've still thrown away all my data. I'm not explaining this well. Speed, the ways of dealing with speed should be a full tutorial and should be scripted out. And now Jay's going to do it in 2 weeks.
No, I'm going to be on vacation in 2 weeks.
He'll do it in 4 weeks.
4 weeks, 3 weeks.
He'll do it in 4 weeks.
Actually, here, Shiny Films did a great speed tutorial. And
good.
HitFilm Academy is nailing that. And when people ask me about speed ramping, I send them to that tutorial, and he is absolutely right.
But to do a speed ramp, the only way to do it is with the speed effect. But I would recommend cutting your footage around the ramp and then only using the speed effects to do the actual ramp transition and then cut back to your other footage, which is kind of a weird and backwards way of doing it. It's certainly not as easy to do speed ramps in HitFilm as it is in something like Vegas, but that's how the effect works at the moment. It's an order of operations thing, and there's not, to change this would require a complete recode from the ground up. So, and I don't necessarily think that's something that's going to be done at any time. Is this the shot that I think it is? This is the shot that I think it is. Is my screen still up?
Yes, it is.
Brag for a moment. Let me make sure there's no sound coming out. I just want to brag for a moment on this shot. I think technically this is one of the best shots I've ever done. This is in Antarctica on a trip with my dad a couple years ago. I'm leaning up against the front of the boat with a little handheld camera at a 60 zoom, so that pull out from the captain's face on the bridge right here, he's way far away. I'm zoomed in at like 60 times on a moving boat handheld. See that little judder, judder, judder. And then I'll pan that around. And then I'm going to hang off the front of the boat because we're on an icebreaker. That was awesome.
That is cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. And then it sticks around, and then we ice break. I'm just bragging here, but I love this shot.
That is a cool shot.
And then we pull out. But, the first shot was I was rotating clockwise. I pulled out and came in. And this is still leaning against the front of the moving boat and all that. And now just to show off, I'm going to finish this as a 360.
Nice.
And there you can see the bridge, so you can see how far away I am. And let's find the captain again.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
So
that
you,
was
you finished
yep.
there.
That was just a flat out brag shot because on a moving vehicle with a little point and shoot camera just on the boat. And it's like, wow, that was tough. That was a tough shot. Technically, it's a fantastic shot. And it was a really amazing day. No, it was. We've got I wish I had the footage. The National Geographic videographer who was on the boat, and he was like, it's like watching you do that is like yoga because you're doing these slow turns in slow motion. He was time lapsing the thing, and I'm like, well, give me that shot. Give me that piece of footage. But,
That's
please.
awesome.
Yeah. That's what I've done for the last 10, 12 years is for my bread and butter has been camera work. So, sometimes you gotta, and I would have liked to have that piece of footage just for trying to find work. When you're a camera op, when you're doing video or stop motion or whatever, you can always show off the work you've done. But when you're a camera op, sometimes you want footage of yourself camera opping to be like, this is what I've done. I happen to have footage where I got stuck on stage for an entire 2.5 hour event handheld, but I can keep that and time lapse that and show that to people who I may hire, just being like, look, this is me hand holding from one continuous shot, tracking on this guy for legal reasons for 2.5 hours, and I'm not allowed to leave him. And not every cam op can do that. It's physically stressful. So that was completely off topic. I'm going to shut up.
That's
actually,
amazing.
Actually, 4K Productions asks, did you use a polarizer, Mike?
Yeah, that's for you, Mike. Did you use
I just muted my mic. I didn't, Terry. It was a Canon SX 570 HS handheld camera, and my Canon 5D Mark IV had been dropped out of action. It got wet. It was still sitting in the bag of rice. So that was the little point and shoot camera that they sold on the ship. And I don't have any filters for it. I didn't have any polarizers for it. It's surprisingly good video and image quality for a camera in its class.
Yeah.
It was actually and surprisingly smooth on the zoom because it's just that tiny little zoom rocker in the back. I mean, actually, and then like a 20 to 1200 zoom lens on it. It was a pretty fun little camera. And 60p.
So real quickly, Flaming Thunder's asking what software I use to do the live streams. There's a link to it in the description of this video. It's called StreamYard. StreamYard is a pretty nice. It does all the heavy lifting for us. So thank goodness, because when I lost my internet, the stream kept going because it's off-site. It's being run off-site. So everything that happens is just for. Is being done elsewhere, and that leaves our computers to do the stuff that we're doing. Remember when Javert was doing a live, demonstration of the particle sim? Things were going just fine until he upped the particles.
That's right.
You remember that, Tony?
Yeah, I do very clearly.
Yeah.
I knew the moment I thought to myself, if he's using OBS and he's using like an i5 or something like that, OBS itself before it even starts off is using somewhere between 3 cores and probably about six threads or something like that. And once you start upping those particles, I thought, yeah, you've had it, mate. Down it went.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and it did. It just totally crashed. It was like, oh no, here we go. Here you go, Mike. Throwing some props to you. Loves Miss Mike's wit and pronounced enthusiasm. I agree. You gotta get back in and do some tutorials.
I will, but as you discussed last week, in just 2.5 weeks, we're going to Ireland for a couple months to scout out where we're going to move to. So once we get back, I'll have more time to do that. But I'm not taking my good machine on that trip. And my good machine is my 2015 machine, so 4 years old.
Whoops. Actually, I was going to go with this one first. Frank, any tidbit teasing on the next HitFilmer release?
Soon.
Soon. That's the answer. Thanks a lot. Greg. Where's Greg? What is the biggest 3D project you've worked on?
The biggest 3D project I've worked on. My ISS video.
That was the most cool thing ever.
Yeah, I'm just an end user. I'm sitting here listening to the pros talk. I just build small 10-second stuff trying to figure out 3D, which I still haven't figured out. But yeah, just play. I just play.
Well, you're really, really good at 3D modeling in HitFilm. I mean, you're one of the best I've ever seen.
Well, I don't create models. I use other people's models, right? I like to light my scenes darkly. I can't do a scene in the daylight, evidently, for some reason.
What?
Easier to hide your mistakes in the dark, evidently.
Frank, I don't know if Frank agrees with that.
Yeah, well, right. He's on a, you know what Frank says, right? Oh, it's easy, man.
Oh, it's easy. That is what he says.
Right.
And he's right.
Yeah, evidently.
For him, it's easy.
No.
Let's see here. Yes, he's actually moving to Ireland. True?
That is true. I see one. You'll see this up a couple above that one, Jay, where HitFilm Academy asks, should I make a video where I say HitFilm 100,000 times? No! All day! And you'll need a lot of water. You could maybe make a video where you say HitFilm 10 times and then loop it 1,000 times, but I don't think you get many views for that one. I want to shout out HitFilm Academy because he is one of the younger people using HitFilm. But HitFilm Academy is a tutorial site, and his last tutorial, I commented on it. He did a really solid tutorial, and I like to support anybody who's younger in the community because okay, so when I jumped into HitFilm, Javert was still, what I'm going to jokingly call a punk kid. But I mean, he was a teenager, and then he went through college and he went through film school, and now he's working for FX Home. And right, we've got Zach Allen Productions and HitFilm Academy. Max, you're another one of them, where he's one of our young people who is starting to learn this and starting to try to improve this. So I would say, you should check out his channel, HitFilm Academy. He's in the chat, or you can find his tutorials on the playlists of my channel. Yep. Because I got playlists of all your stuff, which I can use as a traffic driver. No, because it's the playlist to find probably the best value on maybe using the playlist on my channel versus if it's Jay, go to Jay's channel. If it's Frank, go to Frank's channel. But for mine, it's easier for finding things like Surface Studio or Film Riot, because out of years and years and years, they've each only got like 5 or 10 HitFilm stuff, so that makes it easier to find. But yeah, anyway, shout out to HitFilm Academy. You're welcome, Max.
Absolutely, I agree. HitFilm Max has done an amazing job, and he's a young guy who is really working hard to learn the software, and he's really doing some neat stuff over there. And his most recent tutorial is really good.
And his presentation's gotten better.
It has. It really has. And he's a joy to speak with and work with in the and everything that we're that he's doing. So
yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And here, I envy kids like him because I wish I had the toys that we had for VFX when I was his age. You and me both. I worked with a regular 8mm video camera, taking it down to Kmart to get it, you ever see the movie Super 8? That's what we were doing, kind of stuff. So we just didn't have any trains that crashed near us.
I would have removed large parts of my anatomy to have anything like HitFilm Express available in
Take it.
Not the body part I was thinking of, Frank, but family show. So we'll just leave it there. No, seriously, HitFilm Express alone. I mean, obviously, I'm going back into the 80s and the 90s for stuff like maybe Star Trek: The Next Generation or Andromeda. But I mean, the stuff that HitFilm Express can do would require. On Star Trek: The Next Generation for phasers and photon torpedoes and that stuff, they used Quantel Harry, and that was a $250,000 machine. So, with HitFilm Express now on like a $300 or $400 laptop, I can do stuff that a generation ago would have literally cost $1 million, and I can do it for nothing. So it's just insane what is available now.
Yeah.
And and my fellow old people, they're all nodding. And, Tony C., you're a young punk in your 20s, so you're going, what? I don't remember this.
No.
Sensei, Frank, and Greg were like,
I mean, back in the day, I'll say back in the day, I'm not even going to say it, but, people started off with like the Amiga with Lightwave and stuff like that. Their resources were definitely not bountiful, let's just say that. So if you wanted to do a simple scene with just a couple of lights, you would be waiting probably 2 or 3 days just to get that scene to render. So what we have then to what we have now, it is superior. We are very lucky.
Yeah, I saw Frank go, oh my God. So the first time I played with Bryce 2 back in like 97.
Oh my God, somebody knows.
Bryce, somebody knows. I loved Bryce. Strangest interface ever, but so powerful. But I was just trying to do this. Yeah, I have books. But I was just trying to do an asteroid flying by the Earth. So I've got a rock and an Earth. And I'm rendering standard def frames and, so 640 by 480. And it was taking I never finished the animation because it was taking 3.5 hours per frame to render, and it was the only computer I had, and I was in college at the time, and it was just like, I literally do not have time for this. I have to do homework.
Damn.
Saying back in the day when I had Bryce, I got it off of Amiga Format magazine, the cover disc that you used to get sellotape to the front of the Amiga Format. I thought, well, this is free. I'm going to upload it, and I'm going to use it probably for about 15, 20 minutes. And then the diskette came back out of the Amiga 500 and it was put away with the rest of the cover discs that were never ever used again.
Here's the 80s rivalry. I was an Atari ST guy, not an Amiga guy, but my buddy had the Amiga, and the Amiga was awesome.
Yes. And just touching on that and putting stop motion back in there, there's a video on YouTube for the first brick film, the first Lego stop motion that came out. They sent the film away from the camera to be developed. So they sent they sent it away, got it developed, got it back in the post, and then stitched the frames together. I think that took 3 weeks just to get your photos back. And if you've messed them up, wow.
Yep.
And you can do it on a phone now.
And then, he was probably using a film scanner, but even then, right, you develop the film, you take it back, you bring it back to the film scanner, you have to scan it line by line. Yep. So, that would have taken forever to prep up.
Yeah. And, fair play to them. They were doing things with bits of sellotape and, before many other people were doing it. If you think about stop motion in films, and Harryhausen for a start. When I saw those Jason and the Argonauts for the first time, I just thought, what the hell is going on? How is that thing doing that? And I had nightmares about those little winged creatures that were pecking at the man's food. I had nightmares for ages just because I assumed they were real. Look at it now and you just think, oh, what a fool. But back then,
No, but how Harryhausen, I mean, the detail on the models and then the motion dynamics he did, and that Jason of the Argonauts scene, you see that homaged. It's homaged in both versions of Clash of the Titans. I just finished watching that Atlantis TV show, that Sci-Fi Channel Atlantis TV show from a couple of years ago, and the skeleton fight, and as soon as it started, I'm like, oh, there is the Harryhausen shot with that one particular skeleton. I think Dapper knows exactly. I just that guy. just amazing.
Absolutely. I love that. And I didn't have nightmares. I only had nightmares about Bubo, you know. Oh my word.
From Clash of the Titans.
Yeah. Oh.
The R2D2 of Greek mythology.
Yeah. Here we go.
Uh-oh.
You just made me laugh, 4-H.
Oh, this is easy. Go on, Mike.
Go on, Mike. Come on. Yeah.
Star Wars versus Star Trek. I don't think they're. I actually. We always have the Star Wars versus Star Trek question comes out, and the answer is, of course, Babylon 5.
Yep, good call.
All right.
Actually, you know what? That would have been funnier if I were wearing my Babylon 5 hoodie, but I am wearing my Admiral Kirk Star Trek 2 hoodie today.
Yes.
Trek.
So the last time you had your Star Wars, Star Trek debate, and then you brought up Babylon 5, which is fair call, I put in the chat, what about Firefly? And it was just like that piece of tundra going through the desert. There was nobody said anything. I was like, no, come on, everybody, please. Firefly,
people
please.
must have missed it. Firefly is a solid show.
I love Firefly.
Yeah.
I admit, I would go with Star Trek. No, Firefly was good. Firefly, Fox screwed that up by giving it a terrible time slot and the worst ad campaign ever. I don't know if anybody else remembers it, but the initial trailer for Firefly was like a misfit captain and a renegade crew, a blah 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 blah, and a hooker with a heart of gold. And I'm like, it's horrible and cliched. And then I'm sorry, I don't like Firefly's theme song. If my wife is going to suddenly magically appear from downstairs and slap me for that one. But it just looked like cliche sci-fi Western. And then the network, this is network interference. This isn't Joss Whedon's fault. It's the network that demanded they do a train robbery show, and a network that demanded that they air that episode first. And it is easily the worst episode of the series. And I think that turned a lot of people off. And if they had gone with Joss's pilot, that actually set up the factions and actually had some backstory and actually had character stuff and world building and was actually interesting, I think the show would have done better. But I think anybody who was worried that it was just going to be a stupid space Western and then it's the stupid train robbery was turned off by the show. And then Friday at 10 p.m., that was the Star Trek original series 3rd season death slot.
Yeah. See, I think we got it a different way in the UK. I think we might have got it shown in a different order, and it certainly didn't have that type of trailer associated to it. See, somebody in the chat's talking about Babylon 5 being rendered on an Amiga. I remember that was said at the time, but I believe they just did it for the pre-production shots rather than the actual shots. I think they used a PC farm for the actual shots, but the Amiga to do the test of concept.
They Amiga for the first 2 seasons, and then they moved to DEC Alpha workstations in season 3.
Okay. Yes, and Serenity was cool.
Well, if you're going to complain, you shouldn't have, come over here. Now he's sitting at my feet.
Here we go. We'll start a new one.
Batman. That's the only answer there. Batman.
Batman.
Which one?
Yeah.
No, just
Batman?
Batman in general. Anything. Batman.
Any Batman.
Yeah, any Batman.
Any Batman. I'll go with Spidey just to be different, and plus Spidey. I think we can agree Batman or Spidey.
Yeah.
I think we can meet in the middle on that. No, I mean,
unless you're talking films, of course.
Unless you're talking films, in which case Spidey.
I couldn't sit through Far From Home. I had a lot of trouble with Far From Home. I don't know what it was. I found it too obvious for a start. Knowing who Mysterio was, that was the problem I've got is I've bought every single film on DVD as well. So I'm not a downloader or a streamer, and I have to buy even the ones I don't like, or else there's a hole in the shelf. So so Batman and Robin is on my DVD shelf just because it would leave a hole.
I am so sorry.
The struggle.
I am so sorry.
How about Greg? Come on, Greg. Tell us which one. Wait, you're off. You got to turn your mic on.
Oh, I hate that when that happens. Marvel comics, huh? DC movies. Clueless, man. Clueless. Didn't grow up doing that.
So
I didn't, I wasn't, I don't even think I owned a comic book. I don't go to the movies unless they're 10 years old, and then I get to see them for free with commercials.
well, there you go. All right, how about Frank, Courtney?
Marvel or DC?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, Marvel.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, argument.
Uh-oh, that sounded like it could have trouble.
Well, it's
Really?
also are we also talking about the comics or the movies and the animated TV shows, because there's so much. I think Marvel's last decade of movies have been a lot more enjoyable and a lot more accessible than most of the DC movies of the last decade. The DC movies have had a lot of missteps. If we're going into the comic books, then that's a completely different set of storytelling, and despite Marvel versus DC or Star Trek, Star Wars, Babylon 5, Marvel, DC, Batman, Spider-Man, I mean, the real answer is both, because they both have, you don't have to like one or the other. I think Batman might be the coolest hero because his superpower is he's rich, and his superpower is he's dedicated, but he's a guy who went out and made himself, and he trained and he studied and he made his gadgets. So in theory, we could all be Batman if we tried. But I think Spider-Man is the best character in comic books because he really was the first one. Peter Parker was really the first one written as that real human being with problems. He wasn't the rich guy, right? Because Batman's a rich guy. The Fantastic Four are rich, and they have government contracts, and the Spirit was a rich dude who had the money, and Zorro was a wealthy dude who had the money. So they were all the wealthy people who could do their gadgeteering. And then we get to Peter Parker, and he's the teenager who has to choose between am I going to make more web fluid, or am I going to buy Aunt May's heart medication? So he is the most relatable character in comics, I think. And he's got the best tagline, with great power comes great responsibility. Chris Nolan tried really hard with why do we fall so we can get up again? But that's nowhere near as good as with great power comes great responsibility.
I've always been a little biased because my last name is Parker. So
There you go.
Well, there you go. And Frank, what did you say? I didn't hear your answer.
Sorry, but it was kind of like Mike's yes and no to either one, because they're kind of cool, but heroes need for somebody to be in trouble.
yeah, we always got to, somebody's got to be the one you have to save. So
who's the best bad guy then?
The best bad guy. Ooh.
Joker,
yeah.
Mark Hamill Joker.
Mark Hamill Joker.
Yeah.
Mark Hamill Joker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I can't give you, I can't say I favor one over the other. I like them both just as much, Marvel and DC. But I think for like actually influencing what to, into making visual effects and stuff like that, I would say Flash, because they have so many varied things. Like you have Frost, and you could really try and reproduce that in HitFilm and stuff like that. It's just really inspiring. So that's what I've been into lately, anyway.
The TV show?
The TV show Flash, yeah.
Oh,
the
yeah.
American one.
Yeah.
CW's really kicking butt with some of their new series, and a lot of those crossover episodes with the different heroes fighting together.
Yeah.
I have no cable, so I won't see this season's CW shows until they hit Hulu, which will be after their season finale, so I'll be behind.
Damn.
But I am so glad that Black Lightning is in the Crisis on Infinite Earth crossover.
I know we're going really off
I
topic.
still won't watch that one.
I don't even know what the topic was, but one thing about being in the UK and getting comics from America is all the adverts were so cool in the back. So your X-ray specs and all these sort of things. The big color picture was always of a Twinkie. And as a kid, I just went, I want a Twinkie. I want a Twinkie. They look great. I want a Twinkie. When I finally got one and took that first bite, I just, what the hell is this? What are they doing? What are they eating over there? It is horrible.
I still
Yeah. And we like it.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Lasts forever.
Well, do we have any more questions? Maybe about HitFilm?
Hey, I got one just for Mike and Sensei and Frank. Depth, matte, and maps. Tutorials on those two effects in HitFilm, even just like, like a typed out, help me. I played around. I see what's happening, but I can't get functionality down right,
So, like, what for depth of field and things like that?
Yeah, but I guess you don't need it for depth of field.
No.
With HitFilm's 3D world and camera settings, right? I mean,
It's more customizable.
I had actually done a very, very quick breakdown at one point, and I can't find it anymore. And I think it's one of my videos that YouTube decided to randomly delete after Article 13, and I can't figure out why, because there was no audio and there was no music or anything behind it. But it's like that one went away at the same time as the animation part 1 tutorial for Hit U. But yeah. Greg, I won't. The depth matte and the depth matte and depth mask should require a tutorial because there's some visual things. But what I'll talk about very quickly is depth layer, and I'm not going to open up Pro today for absolutely no reason at all. Beta test next version. Tony C's looking around too, doing the thing that I ripped off from Frank, but no, because I saw you looking around, Frank. No, there's this depth layer thing, and this was primarily for 3D models, 3D planes, and 3D particles. And right, so in 2D mode, it calculates the model in 3D space, and then it renders it to a 2D layer, just like Element 3D. In 3D Unrolled, it calculates everything, and it doesn't render until it hits the top of the layer stack or a 2D layer, so everything occludes properly, but because it's deferring the render, you can't put effects on the individual layer. And then depth layer is a newer, I think they introduced this in HitFilm 2017. And what this will let you do is it'll let you keep your layers in 2D, keep your occlusion, and be able to add an effect. So let's say this is my layer closer to the camera, but lower on the timeline, and this is my thing farther away, but above it on the timeline, and it's gonna, show backwards. So if I take this top layer on the timeline and go into its controls and say depth layer and assign it to the layer below, then those two layers become paired together, and now it'll look at the occlusion just on those layers. Auto matte the layer and you can use the effects. You can only assign one depth layer to each layer, and you need to do this down, right? If I assign the depth layer on the bottom layer on the stack to the one above, it does no good because this one's rendering this one anyway. But if I set the depth layer on this layer to read this layer, then those two layers will occlude properly. And I've actually found that most of the time you won't need more layers than that. If you're doing something so complicated where you've got tons of things going around each other in 3D space anyway, then it's usually moving fast enough where nobody will notice it. I think just one depth layer will work, and that is one of those newer things in HitFilm that makes your life easier. I won't call up I won't call up that Y-wing shot I did as the Foundry Camera Tracker test again. Did Courtney just I'll call it up.
That was not her.
Did Frank
You're not gonna show it?
I'll call it up. Well, okay. I'll call it up again. Which channel? I gotta change channels. I'll call it up again.
While he's calling it up, we'll answer this question. Who here is beta testing for the new version? I am not.
Not me.
Yep.
Yeah, I think only a couple of us are.
I think it's me, Frank, and Tony C.
Yeah, I think half the panel is and half the panel is not. I have not seen the new anything that's coming out. I'm still working with HitFilm 13.1. So that's a fair question. That's a good question.
Right.
So some of us have not seen it.
All right, I have the Y-wing video up.
Here it is.
I'm just gonna kind of. All right. All I was gonna say is there is the depth layer being used here. Bam, bam, bam. Okay.
The effect goes on the background, right?
Nice. I got it. It goes on the. So what's going on here is I've got my Y-wing. Well, we won't talk about the TIE Fighter, but I've got the Y-wing. Let me full screen this for a moment. Why didn't I just call up My Master Render? Why did I do this on YouTube when I have the...
See how you turned out? You want to call it up?
See how I turned... Yeah.
Right, I'll go back. Remove your screen. Go ahead and pull it up.
Yeah.
The master render.
Wherever I put it. Which
sure
is
you can find
on... Yeah, it should be on the E drive.
HitFilm on training wheels. I think that HitFilm is training wheels, you know? I mean, I think that it's easy enough to learn, at least to start learning, that you can keep learning. You know what I mean? I think where you run into trouble is when you say, man, I'd really like to do that. And that happens to be 3 levels above where you're at the moment, you know, and then you start missing stuff, you know, which is why I think my course works so well, because it's bite-sized and it just takes you along in a logical progression of learning it, and it's easy to kind of pick things up and just sort of keep going. I think it was Tony, DafterThings, that was telling me that he really wasn't planning on watching the whole course, just some of it. But then he's like, well, that's only 2 minutes. I'll just go ahead and watch, you know, I'll just watch this 2 minute. Well, that was actually not too bad. Maybe I ought to watch the next one and the next one and the next one. And if you take it in bite sizes, then it's actually pretty easy to learn, I think. Here we go. I just watched Shiny Films. To add extra flow, I can use double exposure as an act of a smooth fade, because the clip are the same on the same shoot. Use a double exposure. I think that would look very cool. Here you go. Terry's on a HitFilm walker. Not even training wheels. You ready, Mike?
Yeah.
All right.
Like a...
Yeah.
There we go. I mean, that's at least a higher resolution version. So, right, I had the Y-wing, and then the nacelle here that's blown off and coming towards the camera is a subgroup. I imported this Y-wing, and I just made the engine nacelles. I set those up as separate animation groups so I could have them blow off. But this little sphere that's causing the engine glow, those spheres are a different layer. They're not part of the Y-wing layer. They're not embedded in that layer. And the sphere is actually set to, it's the layer above the Y-wing, and its depth layer is set to the Y-wing. So this sphere can just sit inside, and it's behind, right? There's a sphere here that we can't see. This flame here is an action VFX explosion. It's just stuck to the wing in 3D space, but again, its mode, its depth layer is set to the Y-wing model, and there's actually a rendering glitch here on this frame. That's not actually correct, but nobody notices for one frame. And then this dark blob here is the beginning of a missile smoke effect, which is also set using the Y-wing as a depth layer. So I've got these 3 elements that are just using the Y-wing as a depth layer, and you know, it's like that little motion blur as the nacelle swings around again. That was a nice little accident, but you can see that it's all kind of, you know, sticking together. And there's the sphere on the other side.
Oh, sure.
And it's all occluding correctly, but I only needed to depth layer to the Y-wing. And now that it's now that we're seeing the froze, you can see here that I didn't even, you know, do anything to actually damage that part of the thing. It really is just a flame and a whatever pasted on. And then for the second half of this shot, again, it's the same thing. Here's the model, but this is the quick 3D bonfire.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, that's just the quick 3D bonfire stuck on. I can even see here that I forgot to motion blur it. And another quick 3D missile smoke, and it's just using the Y-wing as its depth layer, and it's going through there. And I've had a couple people say the motion dynamics on this are a little bit weird, so this will also be where I defend myself, that because I had people go like, oh, the smoke is this side is black and the smoke on this side is white, and I'm like, yeah, this is the side that got blown off. This is the side where the engine's just shorting out and failing. But if you watch this again, you'll see any time that Y-wing starts to move in a different direction, you'll see just barely in there that engine is on. And when the engine is on, no smoke is coming off. And then when the engine fades, it starts smoking again.
Cool.
So, yeah, I'll just note on the motion dynamics, right? So that engine's on and he's trying to, and then the engine goes out and the nose dips because he's lost his power. And then the engine comes on and he starts to rise, and then the engine drops and he starts to dip again. And then that last bit of engine power up, right? That last little jog in the motion is that last little attempt to power up, and then he loses the engine and slams into the wall. And again, the missile smoke it's all depth layered together, right? This white missile smoke is actually depth layered to the black missile smoke, not the Y-wing model, because it never goes behind it. And then the particle sim is also depth layered to the Y-wing model, so that's why the nacelle is through that explosion like that. But it's just everything is using only the Y-wing itself as its depth layer. And just by chaining that all down, right, I didn't have to worry about any of this occlusion or anything. And I mean, there's no filmer, there's no blender. This is a 100% done in HitFilm render. And I didn't have to worry too much about it because these later tools are... I really am happy with how that explosion came out.
Yeah, I thought the explosion was the best part of that whole thing.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
I really did.
I see where I'm getting mixed up there.
Waze is with us here. How exciting. It's great to have you, sir. I'm glad you're here. We'll have to have you come on and join me sometime for a live stream.
Yeah, I screwed up. I closed my window with the stream, which is where I was texting back.
Oh, good. See how you turned out.
Yeah.
One thing you were saying there, Mike, about using bonfire and missile smoke.
Yeah.
So, and I mentioned I use HitFilm as simply as it possibly can be used. So I use HitFilm and I use missile smoke a lot.
It's great.
It is. I just drag it on there, rescale it, maybe opacity a little bit, and it's there for me. So interesting to see you're using it on something that is as quality driven as that, whereas a normal person can take HitFilm Express, drag those on. They're in HitFilm Express, I'm guessing, and get it straight out without having to do anything other than drag it and drop it.
It is a...
Go ahead, Mike.
No, you go ahead and talk. I'm going to find something quickly.
My tutorial that I released yesterday was on how to do the light swirl effect around you. And essentially, I used the missile smoke effect as a mat so that you could put the light sword effect on and use that to go either in front of or behind. And it works really nice, especially coupling it with the threshold effect, because the threshold effect basically boils it down to black or white. And then you can either use this luminance or you can just demult it and make it clean. And I filled in me to be black so that I could, clear that out. It was beautiful. So
good how you did that, Jay.
Yeah, thank you.
Really good. Really good.
And Mike actually had a really good idea, but it didn't work. But it was a really good idea. Mike, gotta love that explosion as well as the lighting on that model. It just gels so well together. I agree. It's really sweet. It's sweet.
Awesome.
And I didn't realize how much effort you put into, he's almost, and it fails. That's really cool. I mean, I just thought the shot was cool.
It's awesome.
It's actually a bit of a reverse justification because I was trying to do the dip and the whatever, and then a couple of those dips were technically animation glitches, and I'm like, no, I'll just have the engine fire up every time it does that and justify it. I've called up. Go ahead and share my screen again.
Okay, you're on.
Please. I'll let this run for a moment. This is something that you guys haven't seen because I've never finished it, and it's a Star Wars fan film that I started just before Part 7 came out, and I never really finished it. And the whole premise on this is, for some of you guys who've been around, for a while, you may remember this is just before they created the moderators. So this is part of the reason I ended up with that position was we had a point where we were getting spammed. And it was a bunch of Korean sites, and you would go to some people remember, you would go into the forum, and the first 110 pages would be spam. And it was all casino sites. So this was going to be Spam Wars, the casino menace, and, and that's where it was going to go with that. And this is so far back that was still Simon, and then this shot is been completely redone. So what I want to get into is this shot is a displacement map that's supposed to be Simon. But watch what's going to happen in the window behind him, and that is, again, the quick 3D bonfire, because we're going to be doing the re-entry, and I just literally slammed it behind that shot to be the re-entry.
Wow,
right?
Nice.
Yeah, and that was just, and I think we go back to that. So that was so the point on that, and there's a quick 3D bonfire in that one as well as the rest of the particle sim. So, and I think the smoke on that is a missile smoke as well. That's not even a full particle sim layout. And that's also a quick 3D bonfire. So, I mean, I use those presets all the time because they're just, they're just, they're just awesome. Oh yeah, there's a. I'll just let that run because there was a lot in it. I'll turn the audio up. Man. Here, you guys are seeing something that hasn't been seen before. So, and because I've never quite finished it, so I'll just let it run. A lot of, and this was HitFilm 4. So if I go back and finish this, I can make it look a lot better. Some of this ended up in the HitFilm Pro 2017 trailer when they released that.
Nice. The missile smoke effect, as easy it is, user-friendly as it is to use, is actually a great little effect. And it really looks fantastic. Oh no.
They blowing up the casino, y'all.
Because it's the casino that is the spammers, right? It's the same. Yeah, it's the same text stream I used for the stream. That's projection. That's multiplane.
That's great.
That's just some 2D animation. That's all displacement. Mocha tracked footage. That's a picture, a still photo.
Really?
Yep. Video, and then here's the shot that I stopped on because this needs to be redone and finished, and that needed to be made to look correct.
Wow,
projection. Yeah, needed a little bit more of a tune-up. And the building clown, yeah.
Wow,
yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So, want to finish that at some point.
That was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, very nice.
Cool. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, and the only people who'd gotten to see that so far were Josh, Kirsty, and Andrea Wake, who is front office at FX Home, because Josh, they were out in LA a few years ago, and I showed them, and they're the. So besides you guys, nobody else has ever seen that, and I know that the FX Home office at some point wants me to finish that because they'd all heard, all the staff there had heard about it at that one point, and when the window Courtney, you reacted when the window washer got killed, and Kirsty was like, "That's out of character for Axel." Well, I was like, it was this footage of a window washer on the actual building I was blowing up. How could I not use that? That building, by the way, is a city called Songdo, Korea, and Songdo is a completely planned out city. and I actually formed a lot of respect for that city when looking for the building, because it's all reclaimed land and it's reclaimed island out in the bay, and the entire city was planned from the ground up. So that building and that park is the center of the city, and nothing's more than 15 minutes away from that building. And the entire town was wired up for internet, and all the apartment buildings, all the sanitation systems. You drop your trash in the trash bin, and it all goes underground to the dump, and you dump your recycling, and it all goes underground to the to the recycling center. And it's just like the urban planning of that city is so amazing. I feel kind of bad about blowing it up.
Yeah, I feel bad about it too. I can't believe you did it. Here's a question for you, Mike. What's your most used or favorite effect in HitFilm? We probably could go to anybody. Particle sim.
Particle sim.
Yeah.
Ronnie?
That's it.
Yeah, particle sim.
Particle sim.
Yep.
Frank?
3D models, just the import.
Yeah.
Import.
Yeah.
I have to say particle sim is my favorite, but probably my most used is the parallax effect, because I seem to always go to that. That or a threshold,
Like that
because
shadow box thing he did. That was amazing.
so many times you just have to make things either one color or the other. So that's it.
I guess favorite was particle sim. Most used is probably curves. Curves.
Yeah. Frank, what's your most used? You still a model guy?
How do you mean?
Yeah. What effect do you use the most?
Probably glass. No,
Glass hole.
what is it called? The damn
That one. Yeah.
levels.
Oh, levels. Yeah.
Oh, Frank, use curves instead of levels.
Is it less?
Because HitFilm, it's levels histogram, so the read back from the screen to feed the histogram slows the effect down. And you were on the last live stream that I did last week, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I talked about curves. So if I just say that levels is a 3-point curve and it's got a black point, a white point, and a midpoint, and you can just do that in curves without the read back from the histogram, curves is faster.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Well, we have gone on now for over 2 hours, so I think it's probably time for us to wrap it up. I want to thank everybody for being here, but I do want to give everybody an opportunity to say one last thing if you would like to say it, and maybe I can start with Tony C.
Yeah, thanks for having us on the show, dude. That was, really appreciate it. Sorry if I kind of sounded nervous to begin with. This is my first stream, really. And sorry for the dog interruption. That could have been chaotic. But yeah, if we do have like a discussion on the particle sim, maybe that would be good for another show, because it's quite in depth and I think it needs quite a lot of detail. Yeah.
I would be delighted to have you come back and do an entire show just on the particle sim.
You've got me.
It could be done. You got to try and get Javert in on that one too, because he's a particle sim master.
Yeah.
Man,
And Tony is amazing at it, so I would be just thrilled. And for your first ever live stream, I thought you were awesome, and I really appreciate. And I'm extremely honored that you are here today with us on your very first one. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Cheers, buddy.
Yeah.
Greg, any last things you would like to say?
Swallowed wrong, man. No.
We'll come back to Greg. How about that? Mike.
Hey, thanks for having me on again, and I'm sure we'll do another one at the point. I don't know if Solo Samurai is still in there, but I'm going to plug Chris George, the Solo Samurai, and his What Chef channel, and I'm going to be self-serving on there because one of his shows is Whatcha Snack. And I think I am the next episode of Whatcha Snack. I actually have a insert shot that I'm going to shoot after this live stream and send to Chris. I'm also going to answer Terry's comment in the comments really quickly. 4K says you teased lighting models, but we never got there. Terry, I think today was a round table, and we had DafterThings in there. So I know personally, that's why I made it a point to ask him some stop motion questions, because the rest of us are 3D guys. But I think what we'll do on the lighting models, Terry, is we'll do that as a that should either be just me or it should be me and Tony and Greg, because Tony and Greg, well, Tony is actually better than me with HitFilm lighting and materials, and Greg is as good. But that would be Frank would have a lot of insight on that, but that would be a thing that would exclude poor DafterThings more than he got left out today.
All right, and Greg, we'll come back to you, sir.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. I did a lot of sitting and listening for sure. Kind of like Frank. Let me put my coffee up here, Frank, so you know I can drink coffee too, man. Use a coffee machine. Next time, if I do this again, I'll have something good to share.
That would be awesome. That'd be great. All right, Frank.
Just thanks. That's it. It's really nice talking to you guys. It's really cool. You guys are awesome. You're great.
I lie. I'll interrupt one more time with one quick tip for Terry. And Jay, if you can share my screen.
Oh, sure.
Please and thank you.
There you go.
Okay. So this is just one lighting tip, but one thing you guys want to do with lighting is change the color of your lights. Do not make your lights pure white ever. Do not make your colors pure white ever, or have a 0 value in any channel. Terry, you've already seen the video on that. But for this scene, for both the Y-wing shots, I've got 3 lights in the scene. But what I've done is my sunlight, I've looked for part of this stone that's somewhat the most grayish, like one of these things over here. So I clicked on that and then set the value up to something like 235, because what the color is of the sun reflecting off something gray in your scene is the color of your light. And then the second light in this scene is actually, it's the bounce light off the ground. So again, it's taken from another one of these rocks. And then there's an ambient light in the scene, which is taken from the horizon. So and this will work in almost any setup, as the key thing is your light isn't pure white, because it never is. And sample a light color from something white or gray in your scene to find out what color your sunlight is skewing towards. Sample the bounce, right, the reflected light off the ground, and then sample your ambient light from the horizon. And that's will really get you close. That's a good starting hint.
And so, quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Percentages of those lights?
It's going to depend on the shot. I think for that one, I'd have to look in the project file for that one. It's probably something like my key light's probably at about 70, my fill light's probably at about 20, and my ambience at probably about 5 to 10.
Yeah.
I'll try and jump in there just for a little tidbit as well. If your project settings are 8-bit to 16-bit float, change them to linear. Hands down, natural would fall off with the light. Bam, job done. Straight off. Although you will have to, once you've done, your light setup and everything like that, render it out and then bring it back into HitFilm and then grade it into the scene. If it's logarithmic, even better. That's it.
Right, Frank. Go ahead. Go ahead, Frank.
Next time, if if you do this again, I'll show you guys how to fake path tracing in HitFilm. Lighting.
Do it. Yeah,
not right now.
You keep throwing that bait hook out there, Frank. Come on, man.
Not right now.
All right, I'm going to have Frank on just to talk about that.
That's right.
That topic, and maybe anybody else who knows about that topic. But I would be delighted to have you all back.
But only in HitFilm though, just using HitFilm, not with Blender or nothing. Just path tracing.
That would be really, really cool. That would be really cool. I would be delighted to have you and talk about that.
See,
all right,
threw that out there again. Jesus.
How about DafterThings, sir? What do you got for me?
I'm just going to say it's been a pleasure speaking to you all. I'd be lying if I said I understood it all, but it was fascinating anyway. You've all given me advice and feedback over the years, so it's been a pleasure to speak to you all.
Do another church video.
No, I will have a request for a tutorial from one of you or somebody on the stream at some point, but I'll either put it in the forum or I'll contact you directly.
Okay, sounds good. What did you ask, Mike? I missed. What you
I was just telling Dafter to do another George video because we all love George.
Oh,
Oh,
man. Oh, man.
Contrary to rumor, he's not being killed off now.
Yes.
He's had a stay of execution. Bless him.
Good. Good.
George, I think, is everybody's favorite character.
I think so. And if we're lucky, you know, since Jay's going on vacation, maybe the next version of HitFilm will be out by the time we would do another 3D workshop, and that would be a good thing because of things that I can't talk about, but I see Frank smiling because he knows what I'm talking about. And I can, in my mind, see Tony smiling because he knows what I'm talking about. And there are things that we all want to be screaming at you and be like, dude, you have no idea. And you have no idea.
Well,
Mike?
that's awesome. I can't wait. I'm so excited because I don't know. But it's one of those things where before we come out live, I always say, if you have this thought like, I probably shouldn't say this, then don't.
Yeah.
Don't, because you probably shouldn't say it.
For the 3D guys, there is a game changer that in development, a real game changer.
Mike,
That's awesome.
Because of NDA, all I'm going to say is, did you see the video I uploaded privately?
I
On the fly.
That's all I'm going to say.
I do want to welcome Zach Allen. You missed it. You have to watch the whole thing because we had a great time. But it is great to have you, sir. And we were talking about young people involved, and Zach Allen is one of the best. Absolutely one of the best.
Yeah.
Go if you have any question, go check his channel out. Some of the things that he is doing are absolutely amazing, and I just love everything that he's been doing.
Tony, yeah, I did see that video. The funny thing is you did the first thing that I did as a test as well, but yours was like much more elaborate and much better. Mine was, oh, okay, that works. And then you actually took the time to make it look good. But wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Does anybody have any last things they want to say before we sign off?
Good show, Jay. You did a great job.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you for having us. Good
Thank you,
talking
Jay.
with Tony, Greg, Frank, and Court bringing the eye candy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Courtney, do you have anything you want to say, too?
Oh, no, I just enjoy following all of you guys. You're all so talented and have such amazing things going on each one of your channels. You know, it's really a pleasure to be able to sit here with you guys and meet face to face, kind of find things in common you didn't necessarily know. It's really cool, and I appreciate being here, so thank you very much.
Cool.
Thank you for gracing us with your presence. We really appreciate it. Hopefully we'll get other people on the show. I'd love to have Uwais on the show. I'd love to have each one of you individually on the show. But I'm gonna be going on vacation, so it'll be a couple of weeks before. It'll be after Thanksgiving. December will be the first time that I come back for a live stream, and then we'll go from there. So again, I appreciate it, everybody, and we'll look forward to seeing everybody next time.
Super. Have a great holiday.
Bye.